Hey y'all, Casey here, and I'm joined again by my lovely boyfriend, Brandon Graham. Today we're here to do a little video about the comics we've been reading recently. Mostly it's stuff that we're trying to stick to anyways, mostly stuff that we picked up this past week, but we've got a couple others that we really wanted to talk to you all about, and just kind of give our thoughts. Some of these we've gotten through already. Others we have yet to get through, but we're just going to share our initial thoughts, maybe why we got them, that kind of thing. But yeah, let's talk about some comics.
Oh, fine.
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 Okay.
If you like that, then fine. Let's talk about some comics. So yeah, we routinely go to the local store in Portland, Cosmic Monkey, which is fantastic. It's hard to find. There's a lot of good stores here, but it's has a really good mix of back issues, quarter bin stuff, and a big selection of new stuff. And they have a good European section. They have like a lot of like children's books that have things like Tintin and Asterix that are really exciting. So we just go there and spend too much time there and spend too much money and get a lot of fun comics every week.
I hang out with the guys. They're all really rad and like kind of know our tastes, definitely your tastes, and I think they've gotten to know mine as well.
Oh yeah, it's a really nice thing when people at a comic store actually know what you're into and can put something aside for you.
Yeah, it's super sweet when we come in, because we have a box there, and they sometimes will just like put in an extra comic that like they think that we might like or whatever, and it just, I don't know, just feels really cool.
It makes me feel really transparent, where they're like, here's a weird manga porn, and you're just like, get out of my head, man.
How did you know? Oh, because we talk about it every week.
Yeah. Speaking of one of those subjects, something I found in the back issues this time is my friend Jim Mahfood's book called We Love Porn, Badass Mofo Magazine Presents.
Yeah.
And I think this was his self-published thing from, this is 20 years old. It's from 2001, and it's great because there's a part of it, it's a bunch of short stories basically kind of all around, like a lot of strip clubs, naked ladies, and pornography. And there's
all those things that we hate.
Yeah, there's things that we hate. But my favorite part of it is there's a section in it where he goes to a strip club and then he goes to sleep and he imagines that in 20 years he's going to be some just creepy old guy that goes to strip clubs. And it's really funny because
now it's 20 years later.
Yeah, and he's still a lovely human being.
Yeah,
but
just a cool dude.
It was great because it's just him having fun, and you read it as well, right?
Yeah, I did, and I thought it was super fun, super good. I didn't know exactly what to expect, I guess, but it's a kind of a book that I just don't really see on the shelves anymore, and so it was really nice to get to find it. It's felt like a hidden treasure.
Yeah, I think we talked about this in the previews episode we did earlier, about how it feels like a slight sea change almost, like people are returning to doing more kind of fun, sexy comics, where for a couple of years it was very verboten, and now people are like, it's always funny because it's like there's such an audience for that stuff, and the people that don't like it can not buy it. But I think there was kind of an attitude of like everything has to be for everyone going on a little while. Yeah. And I think people are kind of realizing that it's not fun if you only have one option.
Yeah. So I would prefer to not live in communism, where everything is the same and everybody has the same thing. So
I don't have a little red book for you in our stack here.
Thank goodness. I have my little Constitution.
Oh.
We can whack them against each other. Mine has guns, yours doesn't. Ha ha ha. Anyways. So yeah, super good book. If you can find it, highly recommend. And it was just cool for me to see something so early from Jim, because I hadn't seen anything that early from him before. So.
He's really evolved as an artist in really cool ways, and I think that's something. It's something that there's such a attention on the news sometimes with the comic book industry, where we see like these new creators come out and everyone's excited about them in their first couple years, and they kind of stop paying attention to. And it's great to see someone like Jim where he's evolved into so much better of an artist than he was, but it's like he was always fun and it was always good.
And the writing was it was so good. Anyways, not to dwell on just one book for the whole time, because we got a big old stack to get through.
Oh yeah, and there's this thing. I don't know if this one's for anyone.
Yeah, so that's definitely. I've been loving Harley. I love Harley Quinn just generally, but this series has really resonated with me. The Amanda Conner, Jimmy Palmiotti stuff wasn't as much up my alley, so I've been very pleasantly surprised that this is super fun.
Oh yeah, and this is Stephanie Phillips and Riley Rosmo.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like Riley Rosmo's, like, especially the way he draws Batman is really good.
Yeah. So it's all around like really fun, and I think it's the book I'm most consistently excited about to be coming out.
Do you know the writer of this from other work?
I know she did the
Stephanie Phillips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she did the Harley that was just before this. That was the 2-issue mini Future State.
Oh yeah, that was really good.
Mm-hmm. That was also really good. That was a Future State standout for me for sure. But before that, I used to know, I forget, but now I just think of her as like this because I'm like, oh, this is what I love.
That's good. And we've also been really clicking with the Harley Quinn cartoon that's on.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we recently started watching the Harley Quinn cartoon on HBO, and it is so fun. I love it so much.
It's really surprising because I think I went into it with the lowest expectations, and it's just been consistently fun, and I like it more and more the more I watch it.
Agreed. Yeah, it's definitely surpassed my expectations and blown me away.
So that's cool because it's already a high bar for this, and this comic seems to be. I've only read the first issue, but I'm looking forward to reading this one.
I'm getting pumped for Suicide Squad Part 2. Woo!
And this cover is really good too.
Yeah. This is I don't know who does these covers, but this person did a variant for the other issue as well, or past issues. This is like the fourth.
Derek Chu.
Cool. Yeah, love it. Love the style. Yeah. Anyways,
it's really nice.
And then just keeping going on that DC train. Stargirl Spring Break Special. I like Stargirl as a character.
Set in Cabo, I assume?
I don't think so. I think it's maybe a couple short stories. I forget. I haven't actually read this one yet. But I like Stargirl generally, so I was into this, and I like it when they do like the silly sort of like themed books. I know some people don't, but I definitely do.
There's actually a Fred Hembeck pinup in this, which is amazing.
It's really cool. Want to show the fans at home?
I don't know if that's
yeah,
but it's like Fred Hembeck did so much. Like, he was such a weird fixture when I was a kid of doing these kind of joke books about Marvel and DC with these swirly little knees. So it's cool to see him existing again.
Huh. It looks sort of Where's Waldo-y to me.
Yeah. It's cool. And there's a Jerry Ordway pinup in the back.
It's a good collection. I mean, it's
that'd be cool.
Right? Fun little book. And then I picked up Murder Hobo. I've been getting a few of these. They're super fun. It's just it's like D&D stuff essentially.
Oh, it's like an anthology.
Yeah, and so like each issue is, I think, self-contained if I remember correctly, and it's just sort of exploring this idea of murder hobos, which is like in D&D terms is like someone who plays D&D and just like doesn't really care about the rules or the NPCs or anything. They just want to kill everything and take all the loot. So it's funny to see that like play out in a comic book form. And I believe it's from Scout Comics, who I've been enjoying, and I try to give most of their books a shot because I've been digging them, and I feel like they don't get enough attention. So
Does Scout generally, they put out one issue and then a trade? Is that their model?
So they were doing that for a minute, and then now they've seemingly more switched over to sort of ongoing series. But I thought that was really cool that they gave that model a shot, and that they're willing to try new things like that. And they're like, obviously creating a home for lesser known creators. So.
It's interesting too. This has an 18+ mature content thing on the cover.
And indeed, because it's
a lot of murder.
Not for the kiddos, but
that's cool.
Yeah.
But there's also that weird thing, like I see people bring like children into comic stores, and I see like people in their 20s and up, but it's not really where teenagers hang out. There's not really impressionable 15-year-olds in the comic store as much these days that I see.
They're too cool. They got their Tic Tacs.
And I'm sure there's places they probably are like buying a lot of manga out of bookstores and whatnot. But next I got John R. Cootie's Two Moons, which I'm always fudging the artist name on this.
Valerio Giordano. Gian Giordano.
Gian Giordano. Yeah, he's doing fantastic work. I think you're a little farther behind in the series than I am.
Yeah, issue 3 is next up for me, and this one is issue 4. So, but I'm enjoying it immensely. It's really cool. What have you been feeling about it?
Yeah, I really like it. It's such a nice like monster horror western almost. Yeah, it's been really fun. Part of me feels like it's almost made, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it feels more like the trade because it's made for trades because I hit the end of an issue and I'm always like, okay, now I need more story. But I guess that's a good sign because it's kind of really propelling me towards the next issue, and I'm really excited to see what happens next.
Yeah, that is kind of cool to because I feel like that doesn't happen all that often where we're like, oh my gosh, it's over, I want the next one already. Like, whoa. Yeah,
and it is such a huge compliment because I often find myself, even things I really like, it'll take me like 2 or 3 sittings to actually finish a like a single issue of a comic book, which has never happened with Two Moons. I read Two Moons and Mahfoud's We Love Porn in pretty much one sitting.
Yeah, that's such a nice feeling when it sort of just like sucks you in like that, and you're like, oh wow, it's already done. Wow, crazy.
And this book that I know nothing about, Man Goat and the Bunny Man.
Yeah, I honestly don't know anything about it other than I just thought it looked fun. It's from Xenoscope, which very cheesecakey stuff. I used to get their books because it was like a crossover between like my interest in like porn and also Disney. So this is like interesting because it's sort of a departure from the stuff that I'm used to. It's not like princesses and fairy tales as much as it is like satanic animals. So I don't know, interested to give it a shot.
Yeah, because my understanding of Xenoscope is just that they do like sexy versions of this one's book's called, they have an ad book called Belle, which I assume is from Beauty and the Beast.
I mean, they can't say it's obviously explicitly Disney, but yeah, it's definitely playing on
how would you pronounce that?
It's anise. Anise is an herb.
Van Helsing Black Anise. Yeah, and they have like Robin Hood, but it's spelled Robyn.
Because it's a girl. Yeah. And they've had Alice stuff. Those are the ones I used to really love because I love Alice. Beauty and the Beast, or not, we already talked about Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, all these different princesses and stuff doing action.
Has there been any like Lady Death Xenoscope crossover stuff?
I don't know. It would make sense that it would, but I couldn't say for sure.
Because it also falls into kind of the Jim Ballant. Do you know Jim Ballant's work? He did Catwoman, I think, in the 90s. And now he does some other kind of sexy lady. Tarot is the name of his comic now.
Oh yeah, you were showing me some tarot.
Yeah.
There was a new trade or collection or whatever at Cosmic that looked fun.
It's trashy fun stuff. I remember there's a book of tarot where a woman's lost her top and then they used blood to cover up her nipples. I was like, I don't think that's how blood works, but mazel tov.
Awesome. So then we've got Gung-Ho, which we talked about in the previews episode a little bit. This is the first issue in a new story arc, which is kind of a cool thing that they do.
Did we figure out what country Gung-Ho is originally made in?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. After I said that, I'm pretty sure it's Germany. I think it's originally in Germany, and then
interesting.
Blaze translates it to English.
Oh yeah, because the names, the writer and the artist names both have von in them.
I can never remember if VON is German or Dutch, but given the fact that there are no repeating vowels, I'm pretty sure it's German.
Benjamin von Eckartsberg,
and
and Thomas von Kumant. Yeah, and I don't know, The only German, I can only name 2 other German cartoonists ever. There's a really good comic about the early days of the Beatles that was originally published in Germany.
Oh.
And there's the Killer Condom.
Killer Condom, yeah.
Which is really fun if anyone hasn't read it.
Yeah. I don't know what the comic scene is like in Germany. I know it's obviously a huge culture in like France and Italy. There's a somewhat of a culture in Norway because I did a crazy deep dive on that. Maybe I'll make an episode about it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But Germany, I have no idea.
Yeah, that would be interesting to. Yeah, I almost wonder if Germany is one of those countries where they prefer more realistic work. I know Russia. I've had friends that have gone to Russia and have talked about how they are much more into photorealism, and anything that kind of falls away from photorealistic is oftentimes viewed as like lesser work by the general populace. And obviously that's generalizing because Americans you could say a lot about, but then there's enough room for niches here too. Sure.
But I think it is interesting to look at sort of like larger trends. And I wonder if in part that is influenced, must be, by the heavy presence of socialist realism for decades in Russia as like the main / only, I shouldn't say only, main artistic genre under communism. So interesting European stuff. You found this one in the quarter bin.
Oh yes, New England Gothic.
Or 50-cent bin, whatever.
Yeah. It's emotionally the quarter bin. I haven't read this one yet, but I was really fascinated by it because it does not look like anything I've seen before.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like the layouts are very different. It's usually like a couple panels of illustration with then just a sort of block of text.
Yeah, it's very heavy text. I don't know if this shows up, but yeah, and kind of what we would generally refer to as prison art.
You think this almost, I don't feel like it's...
Yeah.
Okay.
It has this almost like stippling look to some of it. I don't know if it is.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Just prison art's what we call anything where somebody spent so much time drawing all these little details that it looks like they had nothing but time to kill.
Like, we found a really good prison art book recently called CLF, Cybernetic Liberation Front. Full credit to you. You found it in the 50-cent bin. It was super fun, but like...
I thought it was called ELF when I found it. Because the font.
I mean, that's sort of one of the things they're playing off of is the Earth Liberation Front, ELF. But it's like the cyberpunk version of that, I guess. And yeah, like the detail work looks like a cover of a death metal album or something like that. It's like all the different things, or like James Stokoe stuff, like super good. Like so much packed into every panel, like so impressive. I don't know how these people do it with like. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I always wonder about stuff with James where he's like if how people would react if he did more of a kind of pulled back Toth style.
I don't even know what that would be like. Like wonton soup is slightly more like that, but
I have a really early. We just found it recently going through boxes. I have a really early Stokoe. It was published by basically an American manga company, like for conventions or something, and it has his very first orc stain and stuff, and it's much more kind of cartoon. His earlier work looked much more like my stuff around King City too, because I adopted the toddler.
But now he has his own wings and he flies.
Oh yeah, now I gotta hit him up for money.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it, how they do it, how the folks pack all it in. And then another really fun one that you found in the 50-cent bin, Blood and Roses.
Yeah. Oh, just on a side note before we continue.
Yeah.
Ever told you I saw some Jeff Dower originals a while back? It was years ago. I had a friend that was working at the animator Bill Plimpton studio, and he had some of the hard-boiled pages, and they were actually drawn on. I think he would do loose pencils, and then he would lay over frosted vellum, which is basically like. Not quite clear plastic, but like, kind of like frosted plastic. And do all the inking on that. So it's this big sheet. Looked like no other comic page I'd seen before.
Wow.
Drawn gigantic.
That's really cool. Maybe that's how you pack in all the details.
Yeah. I think that's certainly a thing, is how big you draw and then you reduce it down.
And I hope it's very clear that like we're talking about like Jeff Darrow and James Stokoe and stuff. Like prison art is to us like something we look for. Like I think it's awesome, personally.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool, like when we find that kind of stuff, right? Because like It's most things on shelves don't. They're like, here's a couple lines. I'm done.
Yeah, and it's always funny because the shorthand for it is sometimes like I think when I showed you that CLF book, your immediate response was like, "Man, what was he in for?"
Yeah.
Just really enjoy it.
It's got to be so much. Yeah.
Yeah, because like you're clearly not like looking at your watch. I read The Strange Death of Alex Raymond recently, the preview book of it that I got, the new Dave Sim book, and there's a lot of talk in it about how Alex Raymond had to be fast because he was really into golfing and cars, and so he was basically Sim was making the argument that Alex Raymond like had too much of a social life to spend all day sitting around inking pages. So he developed these like fast techniques to get the work done and very high quality work.
Yeah, I was gonna say his stuff is like not only high quality but like pretty detailed.
Yeah, but it's very. He developed really fascinating fast inking techniques.
Oh yeah, you were telling me with like
the chisel.
Yeah.
So because it's a long elaborate thing, but essentially a lot of people he talks about Bernie Wrightson, like dipping the brush and then doing a couple lines and then having to clean it and dry it and then dip it again and do a couple more lines, and how it's this like painstaking process, but how Alex Raymond didn't have time for that hullabaloo, if you will, and so he developed this chisel technique where he would do this kind of do these little rectangles with a brush that were kind of meant to push all the bristles into like a chisel shape, so he could do a couple of those, and he'd actually do it in the panel. So somebody's like the curtains would have these like shadows on them that were exactly what he used to sharpen his brush with, so he could ink incredibly fast. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know entirely the validity of it, but I like the idea of it.
Yeah, interesting idea. Anyway.
Sorry, back to
Blood and Roses.
Bob Hickey's Blood and Roses. Search for the time stone.
Yeah.
Keep cutting you off.
You're fine. It's labeled as an issue 1, but it's like Gung-Ho. It's issue 1 of a story arc. At least I'm pretty sure, because they sort of imply there's all this story that happens before this. But yeah, it's super fun. It's jokey. It's fantasy. It's sci-fi. It's they have Time Lords, but not the Doctor Who thing, but they call them Time Lords. And yeah, the art's good. I think the coloring's really cool.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of like Milestone coloring, that thing that almost looks like it's like ink dye watercolor almost.
It does look like ink dye stuff. Yeah, it was really fun. There's
letters columns called Blood Letters.
Nice.
I like that.
And we got this one because it looked fun, and there's a bunch more in the 50-cent bin at Cosmic Monkey, so I think, I intend to go back and pick up the rest, because yeah, it's surprisingly good.
I love that feeling of like finding something and knowing that there's more if you go back.
Totally. Instead of just like, oh no, it's lost forever, like I'll never get another one.
Yeah.
No, I will get more Blood and Roses. Oh, and part of the setup is like, so there's like two women who...
Their names like Sasha Blood and Jessica Roses.
No, I don't think so. No, it was, that's their like code names. But the woman with the darker hair is from like the Crusade times, and then the woman with the blonde hair is from like the future. And so they become together as like time fighters.
Cool. You know, one of my favorite things is barbarians in space.
Yeah, like in one of the Doctor Who.
Tom Baker had the companion that was like she was from a future, basically a crashed spaceship society that had fallen back into being cavemen, but used like parts of spacesuits as like religious totems. It's very fun stuff. And then Vanity that you read recently.
Yeah, that was super good. Which we have the second issue of, but not the first issue. Sadly, only a 2-issue story series.
Right. Pacific Comics, which is kind of it existed just before my kind of understanding of comics, the early 80s.
But most of the things that we find from them tend to be good.
Yeah. Cool. And I feel like Pacific kind of moved into Eclipse Comics that then kind of became really good. Dark Horse, essentially.
Really?
Well, a lot of the books that, when Eclipse fell apart, a lot of the books from them went over to Dark Horse.
I see.
Dirty Pear, for instance.
Oh.
And next we have a Bastian Vives, A Sister, which is one of the ones that the Cosmic Monkey guys just like put in our box and were like, we think you guys will like this. And it was funny because they kind of were like, just check it out, see what you think. And I saw it and I was like, oh, Bastian Vives, this stuff's awesome. I immediately want this.
Yeah, because I guess you had seen some of his non-translated work before? Or?
Yeah, when I lived in Canada, I used to go to the French section of the bookstore and pull out a bunch of his books.
Okay. So this was my first Bastian Vives work, but it was interesting. The first like half or so, I was kind of like, okay, like get into it. But then the second half like really picked up and was a lot more interesting. It's picked up for a movie. They're going to turn it into a movie, which I don't know how they're going to do that. But
because we had different reactions to it being a movie, I think. Because I have this weird thing. It's like when I was doing Prophet, I was being a snotty jerk. Whenever people would hit me up and be like, we want to do a Prophet movie, I would direct them to Rob Liefeld, who owned the thing, but I would also send them the trailer to Your Hunter from the Future.
Your Hunter from the Future?
Your Hunter from the Future is one of my favorite 1980s caveman in science fiction.
Oh.
There's this trope of having like half a medallion.
Oh.
And he has like a medallion, he doesn't know what his past is, and turns out he's from, the title kind of ruins it, but he's from a science fiction society. It's not that much like Prophet, but it was a big movie to me when I was a kid.
Okay.
We'll watch it soon.
Okay.
There's a great Kyle Baker comic called The Cowboy Wally Show, and he's on a talk show at one point, and they're like, so tell us about your past, and he's like, well, I was found on the steps of a nunnery with only half of this medallion, and the guy sitting next to him was like, I was found with only half a medallion, and they put him together and like, no, it doesn't fit, and they just continue with the interview, which I think is amazing.
That's good.
But yeah, so that was my reaction to A Sister. It's a really good graphic novel, but I was like, it's just kind of a French coming of age story, and I was like, do the people that make movies not have childhoods they can work from? Do they gotta like go and vampire someone else's childhood and be like, can we buy the rights to your childhood so we can make a movie? Because I was grown in a vat. But you were like, it's about a bunch of like kids having sex. So yeah, like, how do they make a movie about that?
Exactly. So I don't know what that's gonna end up looking like. It's such a funny thing because like, that's a thing that we as humans, or most of it, me, I lived through that. Being a teenager and having sex, but movies shy well, unless they play, unless like older people play them.
That was always the trope in the like 1980s teen movies.
Yeah,
they'd be like, I think I'm gonna go to prom, and it's just like, this Graham Temples.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm intrigued to see how that goes. I like the book on its own.
There's something that's funny about I feel like that almost might be an artistic choice of having older people play high school people, because it's almost like how you remember it, because I'm always surprised when I see like actual high school students now, because in my memory I'm like, oh man, we were like going through all this stuff and we're all like pretty much adults, but then you see high school students now and you're like, those are toddlers.
Yes.
They should be in little plastic cages, like batting it,
I had I have a friend he's 8, and Luke, and he told me that once you're, what did he say? Did he say once you're 20, you are old?
That's
I think. True. And I was like, oh man, Luke, you have no idea. I think most people in their like early 20s at least have like no idea what's going on. So like,
it's funny that goes away, huh? For some reason I was watching YouTube videos of people near death last night, like people in their early 90s,
in their late 20s,
like talking.
Death, Jiro Taniguchi's The Zoo in Winter.
And Taniguchi, I very much fell in love with his work on The Walking Man, which I'm not a person that is like that believes there's many like must-read comics, but I think that everyone who does comics or is interested in reading comics, if they read Taniguchi's The Walking Man, their lives would be improved. It's like I've been describing it as it's like a pure element of storytelling.
Oh,
It's like something that if you ground up and put in a salt shaker and dust it and just put it all over other books, a little bit of that would be great in every story.
It would be the essential oils of storytelling.
Yes, exactly. Because Walking Man's essentially just like these tactile short stories about this guy just kind of going through moments of his life and getting caught in the rainstorm and then going and taking a bath, or like how nice it is to find shade in the sun, and all drawn in this kind of Katsuro Otomo, Akira kind of manga realism. That's really nice.
And to make a shameless plug for an earlier video I did, talked about Mr. Taniguchi's work in my Iyashike video. It's very much healing manga. So I love this book very much. I've not read this next one yet, but I think you started it, right?
Yeah, I'm about halfway through A Zoo in Winter, and it's really good so far. I haven't really clicked with. I've read like maybe 4 other Taniguchi books now, and none of them are quite as elemental as The Walking Man was to me. But Zoo in Winter is really good. It's more autobiographical about him, kind of leaving his small town to go to Tokyo and become an assistant on manga. So you get to see much more of like what that life is like.
Is it Tokyo or is it Kyoto?
I think it's Tokyo.
The only reason I asked that is
you might be right. I just assumed it was the big city.
I just, in my mind, I think going to Kyoto would just be so much cuter. Like, Tokyo sounds wonderful and awesome.
It's cute enough, thank you.
Tokyo's cute enough. I've been told, I guess. But I liked the idea in my head of it being in Kyoto.
Where's Shinjuku?
Shinjuku Station is in Tokyo.
That sounds like Tokyo.
So perhaps it is in Tokyo. So I love you.
And it's got a lot of great things that I think artists can relate to. There's his first time going and drawing a nude model in front of other people, and just what it's like to kind of stay up all night and work and putting your social life aside and things like that. And but it's interesting here because it's much more camaraderie, because it makes me very jealous of like the Japanese studio system in some ways, because it shows them kind of learning techniques from other people doing it and from the professionals doing it. But it also shows the madness of like when he first goes to try out for the job, they basically just put him into work. They'll be like, "Oh, you're here to try out for this job? Well, we have a deadline tomorrow, so finish all these pages." And he was like, "I was just going to check it out."
Wow.
And then he gets kind of sucked into the job. But yeah, really good. And I've read other kind of how to do manga books, and this is the first one that I've really enjoyed, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like it like Taniguchi's work feels much more like, it's interesting because he died really young, and so much of his work reads to me like somebody who knew they would die young. It feels very like he wanted to leave something important behind.
Oh wow,
it's nice.
And then the last book in our stack was one you picked up because you love Heinlein's work, and this is the first adaptation of one of his things in comic
This is
form?
the first kind of modern, recent adaptation of Heinlein's stuff. There's actually, I think some of his work in like Boy's Life magazine in the 1960s or 70s. I know they did some serialized comic adaptations of his work.
That's
and
cool.
And his stuff, there's always kind of he's one of those guys, like I always say this about Masamune Shirow, who did Appleseed and Ghost in the Shell. I don't think any of his adaptions, they all kind of miss the point of what I enjoy about his work. And oftentimes with, like, Heinlein is very famous for like Starship Troopers. And it can rant forever about how the Starship Troopers movie completely misses the point. Like, it's a fun movie by itself, but if you know the original work, then the movie's like really misses the point and is not at all the same thing. But I thought Citizen of the Galaxy, the IDW did the adaptation. I thought it captured much more of like, this is earlier, more young adult stories that were kind of about like boys' adventure. And this one, it felt very much like it captures the feeling of it. I feel like it probably could have used another 50 pages to kind of actually get the airy feel of the story. But it was good. There's a comic adaptation of the Forever War, which is really good. It's like a French comic. And that one, I almost feel like you need to have read the book to really get the comic in the same way, because it's almost like an abridged version of it. And this one isn't quite that, but it's just like slightly less abridged version of it. But I think if you already know Heinlein's work, then this one's a really good one to kind of dip your toes in about what it would be like to adapt his stuff.
Yeah.
I'm such a snob about his work that it's like, I think this is a good adaptation of his stuff, but I'm always like interested in seeing like a real, like if somebody did like something that really felt like his books do. And his later work too, because when I think of Heinlein, I'm very, I feel like he really, like his later career where he got much more into talking about like sexual stuff in relation to science fiction. I feel like that became a real integral part of his writing, and obviously that's not in his young adult books.
And I think it's hard to not be sort of critical of adaptations and whatnot if you're so deeply familiar with a creator's work like you are with Heinlein's.
Yeah,
work.
and I don't have any actual critiques of this as a quality book. I thought it was very solid. It's just high. It's a lot to obtain when you love an author's work, and
Totally.
I haven't seen many. Even like Sherlock Holmes, I'll complain about the adaptations don't match the original as much as I like them to.
Sure, yeah. For me, this is probably sacrilege. I don't even know if I should admit this on camera, but as I've talked about, Vladimir Nabokov is my favorite. He's my favorite author, and I think Lolita is exceptional, and I think Stanley Kubrick is an exceptional director, and I do not care for Stanley Kubrick's Lolita. I much prefer the much less renowned, much less well-known 1990s Jeremy Irons version of Lolita. So
yeah,
I feel you.
I think that makes sense. I think it's not like Kubrick stuff is very. It's like it's not somebody who really focuses a lot on human emotion. Is my understanding.
Kubrick. Oh yeah, he's more about sort of like the feel of it, really. Like Stephen King hated it when he adapted The Shining, and The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining specifically, is one of my favorite movies. So. Yeah,
I was gonna say because I was thinking about David Lynch's Dune, which is like I actually prefer Lynch's version to any other version. I love science fiction, and Dune is fantastic, but it doesn't. The book doesn't have the weirdness of the Lynch movie.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that is really fascinating when you click with an adaptation less than the work.
Yeah. On that note, thanks for watching. If you got something out of this video, please click those like and subscribe buttons. Until next time, later.